Imagine the loathsome aspect of the orc, and there are many. Now believe a scrawny and devious subspecies that shares these traits, but with even more base desires and dense stupidity. Little wonder then that the goblin has no aspiration other than barbaric tribal territory squabbles with others of its lot. As they are incapable of mastering the Tamrielic tongue, there is little to say to a goblin save to yell in violent joy as you cleave one with your blade. Goblins are small, humanoid creatures that enjoy living in caves, sewers, mines, and ruins. They are dumb, fragile, and weak, but very numerous. Their language is primitive and animalistic, as their lack of intelligence prevents them from being able to form anything more complex. This very same lack of intelligence has forced them to see the rest of the world as their enemies, since many races have taken advantage of them in the past, either through slavery or through trickery. The many sapient races of Nirn see these goblins as mere pests, as animals only good for either abuse or for slaughter. Many times over, you will find bounty boards asking for the destruction of entire goblin clans, as their presence in any area typically signals constant raids and attacks. Goblins are extremely tribalistic, choosing to band together in order to obtain strength. Typically, the biggest and strongest goblin becomes the warlord and leads goblins into war, but the actual leader will always be the one goblin blessed with magicka. This one goblin becomes the shaman of the tribe and gets to decide where the goblins go and what they do. As part of the religious process into becoming a clan leader, the goblin shaman will always create a staff called a goblin totem staff. This item, at a simple glance, looks like a basic wooden pole with the head of a goblin attached to its end, but to the goblins, it is virtually the most important object of the tribe. The real powers of the staff are unknown to any but the goblins themselves, if there is any special power to it at all. What we know is that the entire tribe will be more than willing to sacrifice their life in order to obtain this back if it's ever stolen, a fact that appears very often during any tribe's lifetime. The way one goblin tribe goes about showing superiority towards one another is by stealing this staff and keeping it for themselves, essentially starting what is known to us as a goblin war. Whoever gets to keep the staffs by the end of the war is the superior tribe. Favorable and positive interactions with goblins have been very limited throughout Tamriel's history, and most of those interactions can only be linked to forced encounters all the way back to the beginnings of history. These interactions are with the Altmer and the Orcs, but let's talk about the former first. The High Elves have enslaved the goblins for thousands of years, using them for manual labor, for servants, and even for war. It is very well known that in the front lines of a lot of battles against the High Elves, goblins are usually seen as the meat shields. Most attempts at communicating with goblins typically fail for most races, but the High Elves seem to have fashioned a way of interacting with them in a favorable way, at least favorable to the elves. In fact, many believe that the goblins thrive when surrounded by elves, as seen by goblins being generally more powerful and intelligent when dominated by them. Some believe this connection between the two races to be the fact that goblins are somehow related to elves, though to this day this assertion has not been proven. No true beginning myth has been given as far as to the creations of the goblins. What we do have is information as far as to the creation of the orcs. During the Merethic era, some 6,000 years ago as to the present day, the Daedric lord Boethia defeated and devoured the elvish god Trinimac. Boethia then turned Trinimac and his followers into corrupted versions of themselves, which is where the Daedric lord Malakath comes from, as well as the orcs that follow that lord. It is extremely likely that not only the goblins as we know them today, but also ogres and gremlins also come from this transformation. That is to say, they all used to be elves and are now distorted, malformed versions of their former selves. You can notice the famous elvish trait of the spiked ear on every single one of them, including on the Elder Scrolls interpretation of the ogre. The most interesting bit about all of this is that it is very much possible that goblins always existed. even before Boethia transformed the elves. This would put them as old as the original elves, but not quite as old as the histories. This comes from the widely known fact that there were already goblins in the Somerset Isles before the elves even got there from Aldmeris, coupled with the fact that it is also widely known that there are a lot of goblins in Akavir, a place where elves never migrated into. Whatever the reason this might be is unknown to us, though it suggests the possibility that goblins are simply a magical creation, a creature birthed by literal magic. Polymorph spells are not unknown in the world of Elder Scrolls, though they are definitely some of the more esoteric spells a spellcaster can cast. The most famous type of polymorph is probably the Capotoon from Akavir, that allegedly transformed himself into a dragon, though definitely the most common is the one where you transform an individual into a goblin, a spell that we have seen cast in the past a couple of times. It is very much possible that Boethia didn't literally devour Trinimac and defecated Malakath, but that actually she simply permanently polymorphed the god into a Daedric goblin. Same with his followers. It should help to know that orcs are a type of goblin, as are ogres and gremlins. They are all considered to be goblin kind. Seeing orcs as a type of goblin, however, is a little hard, since they possess a lot more intelligence than the rest of the list. Do keep in mind, however, that they were considered to be a bestial, non-sapient race for a very long time in the past, and they were already grouped up with other dumb, violent monsters, though most of the information that we have in the past comes from the efforts of Tiber Septim, as he was the one that funded all research pertaining to this type of lore. We also know that he hated orcs with every fiber of his body, so our information in this particular topic might actually be tainted, as he would have wanted orcs to be seen in a very, very bad light. Orcs, though, have always been tied to goblins, and it is not very difficult to see how both could potentially come from the same place. One can make the argument that an orc is simply a stronger and smarter version of a goblin. Ogres, to the mundane eye, on the other hand, can be seen as entirely different from goblins, at least if you look at it from the Oblivion's interpretation of the creature. But when you look at Elder Scrolls Online's interpretation of the ogre, things start to make a little bit more sense. If you look deep into the lore of Elder Scrolls, you will find that goblins are described as ranging in height from 3 to 8 feet, the bigger ones described simply as giant goblins. It is believed that many races, instead of calling these things ogres, they call them giant goblins because that's literally what they are. In fact, Malakath, during Elder Scrolls Oblivion, specifically says that all ogres are his brothers, suggesting that either they are all the same or come from the same place. Lastly, gremlins are widely known as goblin rats, further suggesting the possibility that all these races are really just one and the same, multiple sides of the same coin. Unfortunately, ogres are far too stupid to really have a religion, but we do at least know that goblins do venerate Malakath, which further connects them all together. Goblins, unfortunately, are a dying breed, and they are very seldom seen with any strong impact anymore. When the great city of Ursinium was first constructed, all kinds of bestial races lived within, goblins included. They lived together with orcs and ogres in a symbiotic relationship and thrived for a while. That city was destroyed, however, and now, as seen in the Elder Scrolls Online, goblins no longer form part of this new thriving community. Considered too violent and unpredictable, no wise orc diplomat or king in their right mind would allow goblins in their cities anymore, in fear that it would alienate their standing within the viewpoint of the world. So now all that's left are small clans scattered to the winds, waiting only to be hunted down and destroyed, or fated to be used for slavery. Soon we will find that the only goblin clans that survive will do so in remote parts of the world, like the goblins found in Solstheim. But even those will fall prey to slavery from stronger monsters like Karstag, who will use them as minions, or from smarter humanoids like the Skull, who will hunt them into extinction. But there is hope, considered by many to be only a myth, and to others an extreme rarity. Goblins with the ability to speak have been found in the world. What was believed to be the achievement of only a few high elf teachers that had found a way to teach these animals how to communicate, but now, even goblins with no formal training, with no chance of success, are finding themselves learning the common language. It is too early as of yet to tell where this will lead, but maybe in the future we will see a resurrection of the old Orsinium, a revival of the old alliance between the orcs and the goblins, and then maybe they will be unstoppable. I would like to personally thank Alex Fitchie, Toby Oliver, and Dylan Baker for supporting me on Patreon at the $25 level and allowing me to bring this video over to you here on YouTube. If you would like to help me like they did, please visit patreon.com/MrRhexx to become a patron of my work. If you would like to help in another way, then please consider leaving a like and a comment on the video. Thank you so much for watching and have an amazing weekend.
Tired of elf speak, all lies, not want any of you, just to be left alone. Here, key to Elf Cave. You kill or not kill her as you want. Cody's done with this mess.